you can hand somebody the best business plan or even the best marketing plan, and it might succeed for a little while. But like if your tank is empty, it's going to crumble. I mean, the whole foundation, if it's not stable, it's just going to come tumbling down at some point.
Jumpstart with Jeff.
I think in the dental world too, and it's really true for business, we've got skill sets that we've got to be able to pull off and really let's at a high level or a high elite level to be competitive in today's day and nature. But then on the other aspect of it, there's the mindset part too, where leadership comes into both of those roles with skill set and mindset. And if we don't look at really tackling both, we not only leave a lot on the table, but then it becomes this kind of this unfulfilled nature. And it's like you can get to somewhere and maybe do well monetarily, but that's why you feel hollow inside. And I think that's why, I've seen people who've done in all kinds of different businesses, built tons and done super, if you would look at it from a successful standpoint, monetary wise on paper, and then they're completely hollow or empty inside. And they're like, they just didn't have a purpose wrapped around it. And that's a big part. When you look at that, I think, and I'm glad that you brought that up. So I really appreciate that you said that, because listen, guys, everybody gets caught up in learning all the greatest techniques, and you do have to have great skill sets, but you also get distracted by buying the shiny shit, buying the new laser, buying whatever, or thinking that some procedure is going to save you or save your practice. And the truth is that if you start off with some incredible leadership and learn how to lead yourself and become disciplined and committed to where it is that you're going, then you can lead your family better. And now you can lead your team better. Then you're going to lead your patients better. It's going to be a much more fulfilling life if you can just back up and do those very simple things. And again, these are simple. It's just not easy. Simple and not easy.
It's not easy. This stuff's not easy. I mean, it's not easy, but it starts, it starts with simple disciplines, and those simple disciplines are what change a life. It's the great Jim Rohn who said, it starts with an apple a day. Yeah. Is it easy as an apple a day? Yeah. Where else would you start but an apple a day? People want to become great leaders, and then they think it's like this whole thing where, well, what course can I go be?
Right.
Yeah, maybe it is a course, but I would just start with a good habit, right?
Yes.
Right? Eat the apple versus the Hershey bar. I mean, make a good decision today, which will impact the next decision. It's interesting, like even great sleep. I mean, diet, health, all the things it's so easy because look, when you make smart decisions, they're compounding. When you feel great, you share that. When you walk in with a different energy, a different pep in your step, and you attract, this idea of what you have today is a product of the person you become. I truly believe that could not be more true.
Yes.
When things are going well, you have to look at your life and say, good, I mean, I'm making the right decisions over a period of time. If things are not going well, you're like, hey, I've made an error in judgment somewhere along the line that keeps compounding. So we want to, even when we go to scale, it's like, okay, I need to train this team and I need to do this and I need to make sure we get our hygiene numbers up and I got to find a better associate. All this stuff, if that's true.
Join the Limitless 90-day intensive to get 25 plus years of proven real life results, all distilled into an unmatched experience that helps you create limitless power in 12 weeks or less, so you can ultimately take your practice, marriage, and life beyond the next level quickly. Save yourself decades of guesswork and painful mistakes. Apply now at www.limitlessdentistacademy.com.
But you'd be surprised how much easier it is if you're the person that those people want to come be with. And I think that's what people miss. I think this idea of tower leadership, I'm a numbers guy, I'm a finance guy, I'm a strategy guy. And, like I said, we have accounting and we have tax and we have capital investment advisors and all that at Tower. And we're a very sophisticated Deloitte type company. But so then why do we call ourselves Tower Leadership? I mean, that's assuming we're just a leadership coaching company. Well, that's not true at all. It's a very small percentage of actually what we do. But we understand the foundation is the leader. And if the leader isn't right, you're never going to get there, which is why programs like yours are so powerful. We have to have people who are looking at Limitless. And the idea of Limitless is this idea of like, I can accomplish, I can build, I can create. There's an abundance of who I can become. And you don't even know who you can become, because if you look back a decade, hopefully you're a much different person than you were a decade ago. But imagine that was probably without even intentionality. Imagine if you had intentionality around your growth and your ascension, which most people don't. Yeah. You'll get a decade's work done in 14 months by 100%. Focusing, right?
Completely 100% agree. I want to come back to one thing too, because you dropped a really great pearl. When you were talking about habits, one thing that just also came to mind in there, and you're just like, yeah, eat the apple instead of the Hershey bar, right? I want you guys to think about this from one perspective, and diet becomes a really important aspect when we're giving this example. When you're looking at putting something into play, especially something new, and even considering leadership and that, consider adding something in that is beneficial or great, as opposed to taking something away. Like when most people think of a diet, they're like, oh, I'm restricted on this. I can't have this. I can't have that. And then your mind is focused on the negative and all these things. Well, I want you to consider something different. Like in this example, what if you just added in, say, like a green smoothie a day? Like if you did that first thing in the morning, I want you to think about how would that direct changes or different ways of thinking, as Eric was talking about, different ways of thinking that might impact you through the day. Like if you had the healthy green smoothie in the morning, and then the specialist dropped off the box of candies for the team and the chocolates and all this stuff, and that's sitting in the break room. Well, if you made the correct choice in the morning to have the green smoothie, there's a far better degree of likelihood that you're going to say, you know what? I already made a great choice. I'm already winning the day. Why do I want to put that into my pie hole or in my bark hole? Let's push pause on that and let's do something different. Now, you start to carry those same things over in habits for compounding for leadership, or I'm going to add something in great for my team instead of looking at like, man, we didn't get these signatures signed. We had 4 patients that didn't have that signed on their financial sheets, and as opposed to looking at like, hey guys, man, yesterday, we had 8 out of 10 that were signed. Awesome job. What would it take to get 10 out of 10 today? Different mindset, different mindset.
But that mindset is, you prepare yesterday for today, right? And then you have the green smoothie, right? If you have a McGriddle, whatever, like you probably not going to the gym afterwards because your body probably hurts, right? And you have the green smoothie, you make a different decision for lunch probably, right? You probably look at the scale differently. You have a different energy level. And I love that you said greens. It's just that simple. That's what we're saying. It's the apple. You just go, look, I know I'm going to feel better. I'm going to sleep better. My body's not going to hurt. And then I'm not going to gain. Look, when we're overweight, when we don't feel good in our skin, then we kind of let our clothing go a little bit because we're like, who gives a damn? I mean, I'm already, and then it affects our relationships and our energy levels and all this stuff actually matters. And it's interesting because we're talking about scaling, right? So we're having this scaling conversation. This is the shit that no one wants to hear. Right. They want me to tell them. And it's interesting because I was just talking about having a conversation with a group of doctors at DSOs that asked me to come talk about how do you double EBITDA. And it's interesting. We're literally having a double EBITDA conversation right now and nobody knows it. They want to go, no. Where do I need to get my accountant involved on my profit and loss statement so that I can ultimately become more efficient? How do I use AI to ultimately integrate with my front desk? And all that can be done, but it's like you're missing it. Yes. Look, even from a consulting standpoint, I don't want to work with someone who doesn't have their stuff together. In fact, my team will work with a lot of different people. I only work with the 1% of the 1% personally. Yeah. And so what ends up happening is like even the people you attract are better. And so the more you pour into you, the more you're somebody who ultimately is worth pouring into. And I don't mean that in the way of God or family and those types of things. I mean, are you going to take the information and then do something with it? Because then it's worth pouring into you. If you're not, then it's not worth pouring into you. And so when we look at growing and scaling a business dramatically, it's like you walk in dynamic and you look good and you speak well and you've got the conversation and you're pushing people and you're sharing a vision and you're saying, hey guys, and when conflict happens, which it will, you know how to deal with it. When difficult times happen, which they will, you know how to deal with it and you know how to drive to results. Hell, great leaders get results. That's a fact. You can have a great happy team, but if your football team was 0-17 but they all got along in their locker locker room, that wouldn't work. You've got to be the type of leader who also can hold people accountable, who can make sure you're getting results, but can do it in a way because people are looking up to you to become a better version of themselves. So if you're not a person that people look up to, that's the job. Become the person that people look up to. Because if you're just telling people what to do because you're like, well, I own this business. That's position. That's level one. That's like John Maxwell level one leadership. That's like positional leadership. Great. You give me a paycheck. Because then if you're not inspiring me to become a better person, if I don't want to, assuming I have choices, I'm probably going to go somewhere else, but maybe I don't feel like I have a choice and I'm working here in the face of, there's no other thing to gain from you. I just want more money. Just give me more money. Because honestly, if I'm putting up with this shit, I want more money. And so doctors who come back and say, well, it's purely economics. You have to understand the labor market and all this stuff. And look, there's obviously, I'm not going to be naive and say a labor market doesn't play any role into the cost of labor. I'm not going to say that. But I am saying the vast majority of people who have ever come to work for Tower, I don't have anyone at Tower that makes less than 6 figures. Flat. I just don't. And I will tell you, the vast majority of people that have come to Tower, I'm telling you, have taken a pay cut. And I've done it intentionally because I want them to follow me and be willing to take a pay cut for a vision where I'm taking them and their family, their lives. That, I'm telling you, if you can get someone to come into your organization and take a pay cut, they're coming because of you. They're coming because they believe that they can become. They're coming because they believe in a bigger future. That's what you want to be as a limitless leader, right? Is that type of person. And we don't see examples of that daily. And the rest of the world, the dental world's commoditized by a lot of lack of leadership.
100%.
And so we go to these conventions, we hear these things, do this, do that, get your hygiene numbers up, use AI, find this new, I'm going to buy the Yomi, whatever it is. It's at the end of the day, that's not going to be it. I promise you that's not going to be it.
No.
It's just not.
And I want to, you dropped some great things in here, and I want to circle back on a couple of things. One, I think of it as look for reasons, not necessarily to call people out, but to call people up. Okay. So as a leader, you're looking for reasons to elevate inside of your practice or inside of your business. And that has a great opportunity. There's a saying that goes along the lines of like, treat me where I am and that's where I will stay. Treat me as where you see me to be and that's what I will become. And when you talk to people where you already see them to be, that has, there's an energy about that. And that often as a great leader, if you can do that for people, they rise. A lot of people who are hungry, they will rise. And you're right. When you talked about people, they've taken a pay cut to come and work with you and inside of your organization, the leadership, a big part of that leadership is casting that vision, and a vision that's bigger than yourself, a bigger vision that allows an individual to be enrolled in that. And so you might not have a huge organization, but as you're running a practice, you have every responsibility to cast the vision for that practice and for your team, to call them up. Your team should be growing, not just in their dental skills, but in their life skills, in their relationship skills, abilities to be able to communicate, opportunities to be healthy. All of those are factors that are a byproduct of your leadership and your organization. I think the most dangerous person on the planet is a man without a vision. Because why? Because he or she will burn shit down in order to recreate it. We have this building necessity inside of us to build. And if it's not building and doing it healthy, we'll burn it in order just to recreate it. So having a vision becomes so important. And I appreciate you saying that. I just want to touch back on a couple of those things. I do want to switch. We talked briefly. I want to switch just a couple of things with the science of scaling. And because scaling isn't necessarily just magic, there are definitely some laws to it, right?
Sure, 100%.
So when a practice or a practice owner comes into Tower and starts to go through things, what would you say are the non-negotiables that must exist for scale? What would be some of those scientific things there that you just say, all right, this is a non-negotiable that has to exist?
Well, putting aside leadership for a second, what I would say is that when you companies hit an inflection point. So if you don't, all companies must continue to evolve or change, or they move into maturity and then decline.
Yes.
So what happens in a business is at a certain point, you have to make a move, a change inside of your business. That is, you have to do that.
Yes.
What happens is during that point of change, there is going to be discomfort and there's going to be uncertainty because you haven't gotten the result yet. So you have to go through a process. You have to commit to a process, which takes some courage.
Yes.
And then you have to ultimately get capabilities next to you so you can get over this hump. And by the way, that's why it takes your leadership, because your team's like, if you've ever heard this is not going to work, it's never going to work, that's a good sign. By the way, if you hear that, it's a good thing, because that means you're making change.
Yes.
And then what ends up happening is you've got to be able to do that again and again and again and again. So great organizations constantly reinvent themselves. They're constantly changing, and they're constantly pushing themselves to discomfort and uncertainty.
Thanks for listening to the show. If this podcast episode resonated with you, make sure to reach out and send me a direct message on Instagram at Dr. Jeff Buski. That's dr.jeffbuske. Look forward to chatting with you. Till next time.